You live in New York City and you've had a long day at work, so you decide to go to the Grand Central Station. Out of nowhere, 10 men wearing ski masks and holding machine guns shoot at the ceiling and yell, "Everybody on the floor." And then as you go towards the floor, you hear one of these men talking to the other. "If this doesn't bring him, I don't know what will." And then you hear some really peculiar noises. You hear string flying through the air, and you hear these men firing their machine guns. But after about 10 seconds, you just hear silence. What caused this silence? So you look up, and then you see that all 10 of these men are hung from the ceiling by web. That's right, I'm going to speak on a very fun topic, which is about Spider Man. And I promise you, as I give this speech, that it's not some ridiculous way to just geek out or to fanboy over something. I actually have some very legitimate reasons on why I think this is a very important topic to give to you today. As I go through my speech, my very first point is going to be on the relatability of Spider-Man. The second is going to be on the complexity of his villains, and then the third is going to be the societal implications, which may sound strange right now, but just hang in there. I'll explain it. So why is Spider-Man the greatest superhero of all time? For one thing, he is relatable, and Spider-Man really isn't anything without Peter Parker. I remember going to the very first showing of Spider-Man back in 2002, and I had really didn't have very many big role models that I could see through the television screen or through a movie theater until this experience. Um, I remember seeing Peter Parker, that he was kind of this nerdy, geeky guy. He had a lot to balance in his life. He had big ambitions. Um, and I even like the dynamic between him and Mary Jane Watson, which I thought was really interesting. And back in that time, I was dealing with epilepsy, and I had a lot of communication problems where I felt the same way. Like I was a little bit strange, but there was some special purpose that needed to be accomplished in my life. Of course, I didn't think that superheroes existed or anything like that, but I knew that I had a purpose, and it was very interesting seeing Spider-Man fulfill his on the big screen. Spider-Man was put together by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. It was originally inspired by Stan Lee when he saw a bug crawling on his wall and thought, "How cool would that be if I could put that into a comic book?" And there's very many inspired characters throughout these comic books. So let's delve into the complexity of these characters, especially the villains. So, in order to do this, I just want to show you a few visual aids here. And these are some of my favorite Spider Man villains. So, let's take a look. So, the first one I chose was Scorpion. He was a lab experiment, um, because J. Jonah Jameson wanted to take care of the Spider Man, but unfortunately it backfired, and he was just outbursting irrationally, and he basically lost his mind. So most people can't really hold him accountable for his actions. There's also the Green Goblin, for example. May have been a good guy before the experiment, but it ended up giving him split personality disorder, and caused a lot of problems. Dr. Octopus was somebody who lost his wife in the process of an experiment, and held a lot of guilt and remorse, and eventually became very power hungry. So as you can see, these villains, they aren't just bad people wanting to do bad things. There's actually a bit of complexity to them that makes them really fascinating and in the study. But there's more to Spider-Man than just the plot and the characters and how we can relate to Spider-Man. There's also something that I think is very fascinating as well. I remember when 9/11 hit, and I was pretty young, but I understood that we were in a very difficult, confusing time. So I have one last visual aid I want to show you here. I think this was really good for Marvel to do when they could have just, you know, stood beside the fact and and moved away from this event. But in Amazing Spider-Man issue 477, you can see it right there, the World Trade Center being hit. And this is where we can actually see that Spider-Man really is first on the scene. You know, there's people here saying, how could you let this happen? And he's just as confused as the rest of us. But the most inspiring thing that I see here is that he says this: the sane world will always be vulnerable to madmen because we cannot go where they go to conceive of such things. So I thought that that was really, really profound, that basically he can't even comprehend what's going on. And then you see him, he goes about and he helps all these firefighters and police officers and all those that are there to help, and even the villains are feeling remorse for what has happened. um so in conclusion, why do I think that Spider-Man is the greatest superhero of all time? Why is he so inspiring? um he's relatable. There's a complex dynamic and a very good story that comes with him. And then third, the outside impact, I would say, is most impactful. Um, Spider-Man is the embodiment of what people can become. Like I said, of course, we're not going to become superheroes. Those are fictional characters, but we can find out what's special about us, and we can move forward, and we can do our best to serve our fellow men and to have empathy for them. As Uncle Ben says in the comic books, with great power comes great responsibility. So use your responsibility the best way you can. Have a good day.